Obviously as the founder of the company, I had to be like a salesperson, right? I'm probably a pretty decent salesperson. And I learned the importance of, delivering the customer what they expect and closing the deal, getting the signature on the bottom line. If a customer tries to leave, trying to keep that customer in our portfolio. I've also learned how important it is, as hard as it is to get that new customer, keep that customer. It's really hard to get good people. It's hard to get good people, and it can be very difficult to keep good people. That's a message that if you worked here, you'd hear me communicate on a really, sometimes maybe too frequent basis. But just how important it is to make sure that our people are happy and that we're keeping them around and that they don't want to go elsewhere. Because that's really, to me, that's a huge ingredient in the recipe of success, is keeping them here.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow? Serving your people. Your job as a leader is to serve the people in the organization, to develop them, to grow them, so that they can serve your clients, your customers. This is servant leadership. You probably know it. But why does servant leadership drive growth? Well, interesting question. Because when you think about your job as a leader, it's not just to do the work. It's to align people together, to get them committed to it, to get them to take ownership. And all of that is servant leadership. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Chase Mullin. He's the founder of Mullin Landscape. Over the last 10 plus years, they've grown to over a $10 million company. They were number 3,470 on the Inc. list in 2019, and they have over 120 employees right now. How did he get there? Because he believes in core values, the importance of those core values, and specifically around being a servant leader. How do you engage your team leaders to also be servant leaders? We talk about all that in today's episode. Really love having conversations where people are in the trenches, not afraid to get their hands dirty. Sean tells a story about exactly that, getting his hands dirty. You can imagine in the industry he's in that sometimes you got to actually put on the gloves and plant the tree, or so to speak. All that being said, thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Here's the interview with Chase. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool. That's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. Hey, Chase, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Gene. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. Excited to have you on the podcast here to talk about leadership and culture in fast growth companies. Your company has really risen the ranks over the years. You've been around for more than a decade, but the last 3 years, you've had a pretty good growth rate. Tell us about Mullin, what you do.
So I hate describing it this way, but we're really kind of a bread and butter landscape company. So we're about 65% commercial at this point, the balance being residential. We do landscape design, construction, and maintenance. And we work in the greater New Orleans area through coastal Mississippi and a little bit west, South Louisiana.
How many employees do you have, Chase?
Currently, we have 120 full-time employees.
So pretty sizable business with that many employees doing a variety of different skills and whatnot. I am kind of curious, would you say that you have a flat organization, or do you have how many layers of people from you at the founder level all the way through the front lines?
So it's not a flat organization. So we have myself. I'm part of a senior management team. Underneath us, we have a layer of middle management, and then that goes down to what we call either the admin or the crew layer. And each crew that we run has a crew lead on it. But You asked a question about a flat organization, and I started the business myself with very limited resources. So kind of from the flat perspective, like the people at the bottom of the organization, they mean as much to us as the people at the top. So in that respect, we do kind of run a flat organization where their input really matters.
You know, I have an impossible question. I ask this a lot. I don't ask it every time. I have no idea what you'll say. And I know it's impossible because it's very difficult. And I haven't asked you this before, so I may get blindsided here. But when you think about your role as a leader, what's more important, your customers or your employees?
Employees, 100%. So, and it's a good question that you ask, because I did not know that for a long time. And I've learned as the company's grown that obviously as I have less interaction with the customers, particularly, the people who have the interaction with the customers are the employees, right? And whether it's the account manager or the salesperson, or it's the crew member who's on their site, on a daily or a weekly basis, like they're really the ones who are representing the company. And I'm going to elaborate a bit just because you hit something that strikes really closely to home. But, obviously as the founder of the company, I had to be like a salesperson, right? I'm probably a pretty decent salesperson. And I learned the importance of, delivering the customer what they expect and closing the deal, getting the signature on the bottom line. If a customer tries to leave, trying to keep that customer in our portfolio. I've also learned how important it is, as hard as it is to get that new customer or keep that customer. It's really hard to get good people. It's hard to get good people, and it can be very difficult to keep good people. That's a message that if you worked here, you'd hear me communicate on a really, sometimes maybe too frequent basis. But just how important it is to make sure that our people are happy and that we're keeping them around and that they don't want to go elsewhere. Because that's really, to me, that's a huge ingredient in the recipe of success. It's keeping them here.
Hold on for a second. Chase just said something. I didn't know it for a long time. What he's referring to is he didn't know that he's supposed to put employees first. Now, in an industry like landscaping, he has a very tough problem with retention, especially those people that are in the field. So he wanted to make sure that he built a business where people would stay. The retention was as high as he could make it. And so he put a lot of focus on growing as a leader and really being a servant leader to those people and creating the layers within the management staff to really serve the people so that they didn't want to leave. He didn't know it for a long time. When I talked to him, kind of off the record, he really saw the value of this and how it really creates growth inside the company, but also provides a place where people love to come to work. Back to the interview. You may not know this because I get a chance to talk with a lot of founders just like you in fast growth. And I've talked to over 500, Chase. And I usually ask them this question. So I'll ask you too, beyond your growth, what are you really proud of?
Really, I'm proud of what we do. I think that we truly create, we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, our core values, but one of our core values is to create lasting impact. And the lasting impact we create, I'm proud of in a lot of ways. Probably the easiest way is to walk through a park that we built or something of that nature, just where we're really, enhancing the community. I'm also proud of the impact we create in our people. We recently promoted somebody who started in the field. He's a member of our management team, our middle management team at this point. And so just watching some of these people kind of come in entry level and grow and develop and, turn into real, business. I call them business people or business landscape, right? It's pretty neat.
Well, I talk to a lot of leaders like you, and they will say they're proud of their people, the teams that they're building. I heard you say you call them crew, maybe because you think of crews that go out to different locations. I've had other people actually refer to their team members as crew members. Where did that come from? Kind of curious.
I think really it's just kind of a term in the landscape industry, and we use the term team around here a lot. And not to dissuade or take anything away from, let's say a Southwest, who I know they're really big on team. Sometimes we'll use, I guess, more industry specific terms like crew. Like I said, it for whatever reason, it resonates in the landscape industry, just because they're easier and more widely known, I guess, amongst our people.
Chase, I want to dive into something. You had talked to my team about what is it really move the needle as far as the company? And you mentioned servant leadership. We've heard servant leadership many times. Probably people read books about it. How have you interpreted servant leadership as it relates to the growth of the company?
So we've interpreted as it relates to the growth. Sorry, I'm trying to think like how to respond to that question. How have we interpreted it as it relates to the growth? I think really, sometimes like leading with the chin almost, which again, not to accuse any other leaders of this, but I think that it's really easy for me, how about that, by nature, to try to lead with the chin and like push the team to do what I think the best thing is or what they're supposed to do. And I've learned that if I can really kind of support them from the bottom, right, and all of our leaders do that, right? Every leader in the company support, that lowest level crew member from the bottom. We tend to empower them to help propel our growth that much further forward. We're, when we have 120 empowered people, we're a hell of a lot stronger than we have one, or let's say our management team, if all 6 of us were empowered. That 120 person team is going to be a lot stronger than that 6 person team.
I want to come back to that empowerment because I think it's a big part of fast growth companies, and it's part of my next book. But I want to ask you this question, Chase. When you think about being a servant leadership and really serving them, can you think of a story that really represents that really that you feel comfortable sharing with us today?
Yeah, I have. There's handful of stories, but I can give you a couple different examples. But one thing we do that we've always done is we provide loans to our people. Really, it's almost oftentimes we don't really need any reason why they're asking for the loan. But again, like I just look at the position that I was in when I started, and I obviously worked for other people, and I always wanted them to help me any way that they could, because sometimes I needed the help to make ends meet or to buy a new car or whatever it was. And so we do the same thing, essentially, like if we have it, we'll give it, of course, with some reasonable limitations associated behind it. And then, a specific story, we tend to work kind of normal landscape hours, right? Our crews are in at 6:15 in the morning and they're off at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Occasionally we'll have to do something that's, above and beyond or outside of the call of normal duty. A few years ago, we were doing an apartment complex, and the contractor we were working for is a really big client, and their client was a big developer client of theirs. And they asked for something that was seemingly impossible. They wanted us to turn around a big piece of the job, and I forget what they gave us, 5-day period, and it was accelerated the schedule exponentially from where it was supposed to be. And so what we did is we ended up having 2 shifts, essentially 2 12-hour shifts. And we were pushing these crews to do way more probably than we should have. And anyway, I spent a lot of time on that job site. At that point, we're probably 60 or 75 people strong as a company. And I think really every night I was there. I wasn't just there pointing and directing or even cheerleading. I was there dragging trees and picking up plants and hustling with the guys or with the crews. And I think that being there helped them to realize that, like, hey, he's in this too. He's not just asking us to do this. Like, he's here. And our superintendent was right alongside with me, and our project manager was there for some of the time. And so again, for everybody to just be together doing that, I think showed that we're really one unit.
That's a concept I call in the trenches. And I remember I interviewed Frank Blake, former CEO of Home Depot. Great interview. And I asked him about how does he tune in to 470,000 employees. Can you even imagine that, Chase? And he goes, one of the things he loved to do was to put on an orange apron and get out there and just be on the floor. He joked and said that someone had said, "Oh, it's really great that you guys have an AARP program. You've got this old guy in the lot pushing buggies." And it was, turned out to be the CEO of the company.
Pretty good.
There's something to be said about you being able to get in the trenches, and it goes hand in hand with that servant leadership. And I'm sure there's many other stories where you've thought about that and you've seen your other team members do this. How do you inspire others within your team to be a servant leader? Because it's one thing for you to accept it, but how do you take that executive leadership team or even the middle management team and inspire them to be that servant leader?
I think a big part of it is by celebrating wins, right? Like when we win based on that servant leadership, or just frankly, when we can celebrate people who are embracing our core values, and to give you, I mentioned core values a little while ago where I talked about create lasting impact, but one of our core values is stay humble, be hungry. So when we're celebrating team members who are staying humble or being hungry, or a combination of the two, I think that helps resonate in the senior leaders' heads that, wait, hey, I need to be humble, and I also need to be hungry, because we need to keep driving this business forward and continuing to grow. And, it's crazy. I have a consultant that I dealt with early on in business, and he referred to himself, and he was in business as well as consulting practice. He referred to himself often as the CRO, the Chief Reminding Officer. And I remember, at the time I probably had 8 or 10 employees. I remember thinking, like, what exactly does that mean? And, I'm intelligent enough to comprehend it. But as the company's grown, like, it's become much easier to comprehend, because some of it is it's just that communication. It's repeatedly communicating, like, the importance of things. And it's incredible. I think sometimes even without seeing it, it's just hearing it, like, hey, this is important, this is important, this is important. And then as we celebrate a 5-year anniversary for someone, I think it's a really in your face reminder on, like, hey, the reason that he or she's been here for 5 years is because we've supported them the entire time. And that's right, they started as an admin and now they're whatever. I'm thinking of somebody who's down the hall, senior accountant, right? Like, big deal, big change in the last 5 years. And that's because we support them from the bottom and help them grow up to where they are.
Now, one more second here. Chase talked about the importance of core values. He said it a few times inside this interview. Your core values are a foundational element to your business. It's to your culture. One of the things that's missing is operationalizing those values, which means make them a part of the day-to-day. I suggest that you think about the rituals inside the company. How are you truly making your core values a part of the day-to-day? Not the words on the wall, but part of the day-to-day. Every meeting that you have, every interaction with employees. Maybe it's some of the conversations that they have with each other around core values. If you're missing that, you're probably missing the attention to detail that a lot of fast growth companies already know about. Back to the interview. I would imagine that you have a build from within versus go out there and hire someone with a lot of experience. Is that fair to say that you build from within and develop?
Yes. I mean, not that we won't hire people with experience, but I think we've had better success building from within. For sure.
And I want to go back to that empowerment that you talked about before, Chase. I find that's one of the more critical elements when people feel a sense of ownership. They feel like they're empowered to have opinions, to be included in decisions, to make their own decisions. With 120 people, you can't be on the front lines at every job site. So you've had to empower them. What are some of the things that you've done to really empower your people and that have really worked?
There's a few things we've done to help us, I guess, listen better. One of them is that we encourage all of our management to ask questions. How's it going? Not just how is it going in a work-related manner, but how's your family? How's everything going in your life? And we do regular surveys. So we actually use the survey results. We measure employee retention so that we can, again, like, celebrate and see where we're doing things the right way. But oftentimes those suggestions that we're putting into place, and then we're saying, hey, this is courtesy of, Joe Smith. He gave us this idea, and now we're implementing this new system, and maybe we roll it out to the entire team and make sure that we acknowledge Joe and bring him up to the front. And, if Joe doesn't want to talk, he doesn't have to, but if he does, maybe he says a few words. And again, then Sally Smith, she can see as she's standing in the circle and think, well, I want to voice my opinion too. Like, it matters here. So again, it's celebrating the fact that, like, we do listen, because without that, I think people forget that, they're just human nature, forget that like their voices really matter because they see this big company, not big compared to Home Depot, of course.
Well, I wanted to spend the last couple of minutes of our time, Chase, really kind of diving into one thing that's on my mind. Retention rate is probably very important to your business. I don't know the exact numbers, but I would figure the landscaping and that whole market traditionally doesn't have the best retention rate. So do you know where you stand, like compared to your peers? And what do you figure is kind of the driving force behind a great retention rate?
So they don't, that I'm aware of. I don't think that nationally, any of the landscape organizations really have measured, median retention rates. But so we're members of a peer group, and we do benchmark against other companies in our peer group. We're at the top of the pack, not the leader necessarily, but out of 6 companies, there's 3 of us who tend to be on the forefront.
Yeah.
It's really difficult due to the seasonality of the work and kind of the entry level nature of a lot of the positions. We do measure office and management separately from field too, just knowing that obviously field turnover is going to be higher.
Well, I know that we came here to talk about servant leadership and humility. Was there anything else that I didn't ask you about that you felt like really has had an impact to the growth of Mullin?
I know one of the things that Sarah and I talked about was, was there any change in my leadership that, or the way that I thought about leadership that really has contributed to the growth of the company? And we touched on it a little bit early on, but again, I don't say this, or don't get me wrong here, but, I have to be at least probably reasonably intelligent to be in the position that I'm in. And I think that can be a dangerous thing, right? Like recognizing your intelligence. And I mentioned like, hey, I've done plenty of sales and whatever. I've managed to hire some of the right people. And, I've certainly made some good decisions, since founding the company. But I think that one of the biggest limiting factors that I had was where I wanted, I thought my decision making was always the best for a period of time, right? And I didn't really empower people fully. And I don't know if there was necessarily like an aha moment where I changed it, but, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, I realized that if I didn't get out of the way, I was going to be the limiting factor of the company. As smart as I thought that I was, right? If I didn't empower some of these people that were kind of, working underneath me to really get out on the front and lead and, grow the company, that we were always going to be pigeonholed by Chase Mullin. And so it was about 3.5 years ago, we elected a senior management team. We really put these leaders in charge of their divisions, and, they're really empowered. We call it business units. They're really empowered to like run their own business unit and truly, have weekly one-on-ones with each one of them, and truly like my role in that one-on-one and in the way I manage them is to help. It's one of the questions I always ask, like, how can I help? And sometimes they say, leave us alone. Right. And that I do, I get back and, for other like owners or leaders out there, the thing that's made me comfortable in doing it is, we measure, we have KPIs, and, if the numbers are there and the numbers are good, then I just need to stay the hell out of the way. And, the numbers speak for themselves. And, sometimes it's just a feel you can get in the business as you see the projects coming in or the backlog remaining strong or the margins are good or whatever. And it's just let them keep doing what they're doing. And recognizing that I didn't need to have my finger on the pulse of every little piece of the business is really, that to me, like for Mullin, that's the difference between, probably a $8 million business, and we call it like the adolescent stage, to the, almost $15 million business where we are today, as we're kind of continuing to move into that like maturity phase.
I want to wrap this up with one question. This can be a short answer, but do you remember how many employees you had when you started to have this revelation of, I've got to empower these business units, and I got to really get out of the day-to-day so that I can truly serve them and be the leader I need to be?
It was around 60 to 70.
Perfect. Well, Trace, thanks for being here on the podcast. I really appreciate your wisdom, insights, And, talking about servant leadership is something that's fun.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and it served us well, obviously. Thank you, Gene. Thanks for having me here.
Well, thanks for tuning in to another great episode here at Growth Think Tank. We really do appreciate you being a part of our tribe. Learning about servant leadership or why servant leadership drives growth, that's just one of the elements that we bring to this conversation of fast growth. One of the things that makes us really different is that we focus on conversations with those founders, those CEOs that are on the front lines of their own leadership. All that being said, thank you for leaning in a little bit. Hopefully you took notes. Hopefully you're actually wanting to apply some of the messages that were in here today. Maybe you have a question. Why is core values so important to leadership? What is servant leadership as it relates to developing my next class of leaders? If you have those questions running through your head, make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. I've got some resources just for you. If you are on a journey to be a great leader, to work through the defining moments of your own leadership, also make sure you reach out to me. I'd love to get to know you and see how we could actually connect and engage each other. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.